Hey guys, I think I'm live. How are you? Oh, for the love of Pete. I'm going to put in my other stuff here and have you guys go to my website, sign up for my email list, and yeah, I don't really care about stars. I just go to my website, sign up for my email list. I've changed a lot of things. If you're on an old email list, you'll receive emails for about another, I don't know, week or two, but you're going to hear an email that says, hey, this isn't where I live anymore. I have I'm going to be getting rid of all of the old energy that I used to sit in. Just setting an example. So I wanted to come to you live today because whether you're aware of it or not, there was a pretty big event here in upstate New York. It was actually a national news piece of it. And I cannot, under any circumstances, really talk about the depth of or specifics that I had any involvement with it. I will tell you that it's there were multiple mystics involved, and there was a level of baffledness. There was a level of this is a non-issue, and there was also the dread and feel of non-issue means you can't do anything about it. And what I'm talking about is the recent Amber Alert that included Charlotte. And I want to say a couple of things right off the bat. I'm not going to be using her last name because I know that YouTube becomes perpetuity. And after this date, now that she has been returned home safely, she needs to be allowed to return to normal, whatever that is to her, whatever that is in her world. As a public that really had an outpouring and care, we have absolutely zero connection now that she's returned home safely. As a general public, we do not get to get the answers. We do not get to know how she's doing. We do not get to know what happened during her capture. First off, for legal reasons, but more so for energetic reasons, which, by the way, should supersede all of this. A little girl needs to return back to normal. The only reason why I'm creating this video, and again, I'm protecting her, and many of you know her as Charlotte, and I'm not trying to withhold general information that isn't public. I just want to stop the energetic flow of having her looked up every 2 minutes and having that energy go into her life. So resist the need to do a deep dive here. Resist the need to say whatever happened to and whatnot, because what I want to show you is the astrology of a missing person and why she returned when she did. This is a profound thing. And those of you that know this, I'm an adoptive foster parent. I got involved with the system on a lot of different levels. I'm a certified parent coach. I work with both biological parents and foster families. I don't do quite as much now as what I did once upon a time because I'm busy doing this, but but I still have a soft spot for it. I have qualifications to emphasize what goes on in the parent. I also have been involved with dozens of these cases, and I rarely talk about them publicly. The reason why I wanted to bring this together is because there is something very unique that happened in the astrology of the exact timing, and I mean exact timing, when she was discovered and brought to safety. That's really the purpose of my video. However, since we're here, how about a little lesson? Some of you have heard the Amber Alert time and time again, and you're not really sure what the hell it means, but you're like, it's an Amber Alert. Well, there's a little bit of history to it, and let's just go ahead and start the presentation, everybody. The Amber Alert was actually created because of a girl near the Dallas area, and Amber is connected to Amber Hagerman. She was a girl that was taken and abducted and was subsequently found murdered and stabbed. And something unique happened, though, when she was taken. Her parents had a friend that worked at the local radio station. And by the way, those of you from Texas know that radio is still king down there. You know, whether you're talking about the the KCBW or the KDF, KDFW, all of those down there really kind of run the roost. It's relatively flat, and a decent sized signal will reach the entire state. So they realized that if they could get the word out as quick as possible and talk about it, they actually were met with several different legal challenges because they were actually advertising this person's license plate. They were basically saying this guy has her. There was a lot of rules that were being broken that they didn't know were being broken, if that makes sense. So during this time, and again, this is in 1996, unfortunately, when she was found murdered, it actually inspired a lot of people to say, okay, fine. Technology has changed and there's a different way in order to do this. We don't need to have CB coverage to CB coverage, right? Why not turn it into a broadcast, an emergency broadcast? Well, that led to Senators Hutchinson and Feinstein to do a bipartisan offering to be able to bring in the idea that a national broadcast system could be activated in the event of an emergency where when protocols are met, protocols can be broken. In other words, they can talk about a license plate and they can talk about a make. They can talk about a known assailant. They can talk about things that were there. They also put forth a lot of red tape busting maneuvers, up to and including synchronizing the National Sex Offender Registry. This is critical. And once upon a time, I think I was very withheld with the idea that sex offender registries needed to kind of, they've done their time and they've rehabilitated and that sort of thing. I think it's a very difficult sell for anyone that has worked on any of these cases. And again, I'm not saying anything about this case in particular, but once you've seen enough of these, the idea of rehabilitation for sex offenders is just an absurd idea. It just doesn't happen. It's just a matter of when they will get themselves to a place where they've already disrupted boundaries. They don't know what they are and they never learn them. That sounds very kind of absolutism on my part, in predeterminism on my part, but I will tell you that that's a challenge. Well, these two ladies, Senator Hutchinson from Texas, Senator Feinstein from California. Senator Feinstein, your legacy, having passed just a week ago, really sits within this law to me. Like, and I'm not saying she was great. I'm not saying she shouldn't be judged for some of her ideas or other actions or whatever, but these two ladies got this right. And by the way, this is why feminine energy and balanced energy in things like politics are super important. Both sides of the aisle are represented. Both sides of the aisle have a good idea to unify to say, let's keep our children safe. It can happen again, everybody. It can happen again. This is also George W. Bush signing into law in April in 2003, the Amber Alert. Now, obviously, this happened in, the initial abduction happened in 96, and it's taken all this time to get there. This is part of the red tape that kind of goes into it, but gratefully it was passed. Granted, this is a photo opportunity, but if you'll notice the blonde standing in the back on the left-hand side, that is a young lady with the last name of Smart. She was abducted for months, if not years, and she was actually held against her will and kept, for lack of better terms. It was really important that she was there because an Amber Alert would have actually turned her case around. This is super important to what's going on with anybody in an Amber Alert, because these are possibilities, these are situations, and this is very real time. And our government, honestly, really doesn't do a whole lot for us at the end of the day. I mean, we're free people. We can kind of do what we want. They shouldn't be involved by definition. But when it comes to things like this, they really, truly need to be able to protect us in a way. And the law was set up in a very smart way that essentially, and again, I want to kind of put this out there, that it is a system and a series of alerts, of management systems and awarenesses that allow the general public to be aware of this, to actually kind of become your own kind of hero and cape getter, if you will. That doesn't mean that you have to have a superhero proxy or any of that other good stuff, but you're involved. If you keep your eyes and ears peeled, that is an important thing, and that is truly what it is that you are meant to do. Not get in your car and chase after things. Let the professionals be the professionals, including the mediums and psychics that are connected to this, right? But since the Amber Alert has been activated and instituted, it has saved over 1,100 children's lives. That's good enough for me. Can't wait for it to be more over time. There have been alert plans throughout the United States. What that means is that each state or jurisdiction, because some of the states are classified, you might have a subset in a larger city like New York City and New York have two separate plans. They mirror each other and they synchronize with one another. This also includes Indian territory in Indian countries as well. So you've got the effect in this, and the Amber Alert notice. Children have also been recovered in this because there is a national missing and exploited children's database in which people can look to see if a child looks familiar, if you ever feel suspecting or what have you. There is a very compelling thing in all of this that right now I don't know about you guys, but I get ticked off when I have to like ring my own groceries out and bag my own stuff. Like, I'm annoyed. But I do think that self-service actually has a lot of fit into some of where we are in society, and being a vigilant citizen is one of them. This is one of those things where you can access those databases. You're going to actually see this in the link below. I'm going to add it in to go to Amber Alert, to see any missing children, to be able to check your sex offender registry. I mean, awareness is key. I'm not trying to push paranoia here. I'm trying to push awareness. And, you know, to no fault of anybody in the current situation with Charlotte, they didn't do a damn thing wrong. And most parents don't. But sometimes being aware of this sometimes is one of the steps that could help it happen, right? So the Amber Alert has actually proven some sincere effectiveness over the past 20 years. And I want to give everybody kind of a little bit of a background of what happens when somebody goes missing. So when a child under the age of 18 goes missing, it could be for a host of reasons. In order for an Amber Alert to be executed, to be elevated, a whole lot of things have to happen. So a lot of people think, oh, it took them a full day to do an Amber Alert. They have a certain protocol. One of the things with this legislation is that there is a proximity. Oh yeah, proximity for people to be able, and law enforcement to be able to go through and have all of the checkpoints of it. It includes things such as, but not limited to, making sure that you've done a thorough investigation around the area. Make sure that you look at all of the dynamics that are contingent upon the parents. It's collecting eyewitnesses. It's looking at surveillance video. It is looking at known assailants in the area. There is a whole host of things that have to happen, and it happens quickly. It is a tremendous amount of resources in a short amount of time. It is very contingent on the phone call, and then the part of it where you then, you know, they can then say, well, we have crossed all of these things off the list. By the time it gets to an Amber Alert, it is because they are running out of options, or they have a very specific thing to go on and they do not know where it is, and that child is in imminent danger. Amber Alerts do not happen willy-nilly. Same thing with Silver Alerts. And by the way, maybe I'll do a video on Silver Alerts as well. But Silver Alerts is when there is anyone over the age of 55. Sorry, some of you just cringed and said, well, me? 55 in some states, 65 in other states, and basically anybody over the age of 30 in Florida. Sorry, I had to be a little light about something. But Silver Alerts also have a very specific dynamic in which it gets activated. It is not a willy-nilly thing. It is developed as a tool. It is a tool that I feel is used properly 99.9% of the time. They do not want to challenge the public. They do not want to scare the public. They do not want to get to that point. But sometimes, and it is not a failure, and I cannot say this enough, it is not a failure of the police. They have done their due diligence. That is why they're getting the Amber Alert. Everybody needs to understand that the police that I have been involved with over the years, and especially over the last 72 hours, are nothing short of top-notch and trained professionals in their work. They have a heart, they have a conscience, and they are there for no less than 36 hours at a clip to make sure that things are going out there the way that it is, right? So the understanding of how the system operates and works, I am very defendant of this process, because are there inaccuracies sometimes? Sure. Are there challenges with it? Sure. This is pretty good. This is pretty good. Yeah, Wendy, it takes a village. You're about to see the astrology. But the conversation about how and why Amber Alerts happen, we should be grateful that as a society, we've actually evolved enough to actually have things like this in place. So I want to bring back this guy here, and I want to talk about, kind of a chain of events that had happened. And again, it's really time to allow Charlotte to be anonymous. That's why I'm covering her face. That is also why I will not be using her last name moving forward, for the simple reason that she deserves to kind of be anonymous from here on in. She has to heal. She has to grow. She has to be a kid. Let's get out of her way. But let's talk about this as facts. As in, when the Amber Alert actually happened, I want to go back even 17, 18 hours beforehand. After her parents had notified the police did all of the protocol things that they needed to do. The state troopers were involved, and then more importantly, a specific group in the North Country in upstate New York, the Wilton BCI, which is a specialized group that looks into missing persons, homicides, etc., true crime type of work, right? Crime, ballistic crime investigations. That's what they're dealing with. They are looking into the factual evidence so that then they can not only collect evidence in case it is a crime, but then they can also surmise their investigative prowess to this. They also invoked the FBI because of fear of moving over different starts of. There you go. Thanks, Kimmy. Kim, thank you for that information. I know that it's certain ages in certain states. So, Kim, maybe we should have you on. I'm not going to out you here. So the part of it that I want to kind of really put into effect is that by the time it got here, there was a whole slew of things that had happened. They had already scoured the parts of the park that she may have been in. They had done things like brought in canine. They had brought in aerial support. They had brought in technology, infrared, so forth and so on. They actually had been doing a lot of work. When they realized that she was not in the area that they were searching is when they activated the Amber Alert the following morning. They gave it a good college try the following morning to make sure that there was, and just in case they didn't have any stone unturned, and again, they were still looking for evidence to this. Now, let's get into the astrology here, everybody. I'm going to kind of minimize myself here and make this into a little bit larger. Well, look at you, Penny, showing up. I'm glad I gave you a headsy uppy. How you doing? Yeah, it's funny that Pluto in retrograde and Mercury in Virgo is actually one of the points I want to point out here. But I want to start with, actually start with the oppositional points that are sitting here. And those of you that follow me on Facebook, those of you that follow me on Instagram, you saw a little bit about what I had talked about this morning when it was connected to this, right? So really just sitting here, I just want to sit on the 29th Anaric of the rising sign connected to what was going on with this particular time. And by the way, they made this announcement at about 6:15, 6:20, and they moved pretty quick with this. I chose the time of 6:07 for some reasons that I'll just let sit there. Neptune is sitting on the ascendant. That is this pitchfork-looking thing in Pisces. This is in opposition to Mercury. Now, in my surmise and my take on this, sitting in the 12th house to the 6th house is incredibly troubling, because what's happening is that it's creating an illusion. It's creating an illusion of action, and it is very much a time of deception. The fact that it is in the 6th and the 12th house is also kind of like, in this case, it's talking about why the conditions might have been set to begin with. In other words, why was she kidnapped? Then you can talk about Saturn, again, in opposition to Venus. And if you're in my weekly class, which, by the way, sign up for my email. I'm sending out another email. If anybody has signed up for it in the last 2 weeks, I haven't gotten to you yet, but I will. But this Saturn in opposition to Venus actually talks about a conflict at home, a conflict at the root of your foundation, The opposition, this is as simple as a disagreement at the dinner table, or it is as complex as feeling unsafe in your home environment, right? Not feeling loved, not feeling secure, not feeling protected. Then Penny points out, and I'm going to really drive this piece of it home, Pluto kind of saved the day here, everybody, right? Yes, good observation there, Trish. Saturn in opposition to Venus is very much in opposition to male energy, for sure. But in general, I'm focusing in on the home, the male part of it. Not going to talk about the person that was accompanying her. Way too early to do that, and not my place, and I don't want to break any bonds or promises I've made. So Pluto kind of comes in and starts to save the day, and I'm going to say it like this. Pluto's badass. Pluto does his work, and Pluto doesn't care if you care. Pluto is going to recreate, regenerate, and give empowerment to whatever it is that it feels that it needs to. We've got two very specific things that are going on here, and one of them actually includes Venus. So Pluto is square to Mars. Talk about your conflict with male. It's an empowerment of male. But more so, it's cause of action. You have the 11th house. The 11th house, which talks about community, talks about the definition. It talks about the idea that you have the idea where the 11th house is about the community, the greater network, and then you have the personal relationships, the ones that are closest to you in the 7th house. Well, Mars sitting in there, conjunct to the South Node, which means this is a loving family. Pluto is acting upon this to basically be like, hey, listen, get off your ass. If you love her, you're going to find her. Come on, go get her. Then Mars goes ahead and does the solid into the trine energy into Venus. Well, guess what? This is really kind of a by-proxy of the male masculine being empowered, the actionable things like, say, a mass search for someone, landing then into the 6th house, which is very much with the connection to make sure that she's safe. It's in the 6th house, guys. The 6th house is what's closest to you. It's about your personal health, your personal boundaries, that sort of thing. And there she is in the 6th house, the Venus. Right? So Saturn's not doing her a favor by saying, hey, we're a little unsafe here. But Pluto comes in and says, I'm going to knock the Mars ball into the side pocket over there into Venus. We're going to sextile this energy and make sure that the right things happen, almost kind of subtly, not as direct. A little bit behind the 8 ball here, but we're going to make sure that it happens. Now, I'm going to get into Mercury. By the way, I'm skipping the sun. I mean, the sun did what the sun does. Right? Yes, it's got some shedding light onto Chiron. Fantastic. Personal healing time, everybody. And yes, it's also running into Uranus. Actually, I'm not skipping it at all. It's a square energy into Uranus. In other words, it is saying quick and sudden and the rebellion for healing. Right? Chiron has this influence. It's got this sextile energy running into it, actually the opposition energy into it. But it's really talking about being able to say, like, this could be unhealing. And listen, anyone who has been in the situation that Charlotte has been in, let's be brutally honest, she's not going to be the same, which is why we're protecting so much about her here. Then you have the dynamic of Uranus basically pushing back to the sun and saying in this very kind of like direct way, vice versa, basically saying, hey, we have to bring this to light. We have to find out a very unusual way to figure this out. Yes, I'm gonna get to it, guys. You guys are doing great. So then you have then you have Mercury and Uranus in the opposition. That is the unsafe nature of this, right? And then let's talk about the 2nd house. Some of you are reading ahead. I love you. What you have here is the grand Earth trine. You have Pluto connected to what is going on with Uranus, which, by the way, is empowered by the emotions of the moon as it becomes conjunct during this time. In Taurus, And then, oh, by the way, then you have Mercury sitting in Virgo. All three signs are in the earth signs. It is very grounding. It is very practical. And this is when Pluto turns to them and says, cut your shit. Let's go. We need to act on this. We need to do something different, and we need to be emotional about it. Anybody that has talked to anyone that has been anywhere near this case, whether it's because you knew a distant relative of the person that was taken, a friend of a friend, I even know the photographer. I even know a photographer who shot Charlotte's aunt's wedding that she had to go through all of her 10,000 pictures to find the 2 pictures of her to honor her. This area was affected by this. This area was taken aback. It was emotional. I heard of people that when they were out and they were at restaurants, the restaurant cheered when the alert was canceled and the news came out that they were found. My text blew up, even though I'd been given a heads up that it was being canceled. I'm like, oh, this is either really good or really not good. It turned out it was really good, and thank goodness. And the part of it that I think is pretty amazing is that when this lands on your lap as a medium, I'm gonna pull off of this for a second. As a medium, if you're a good medium, forget about great mediums. They're the ones that are on TV that have producers, right? You want to be a good medium, one that does effective work every day. And something like this happens. You literally have to go through these steps every single time. And those steps include being able to shut off your emotional value to this so you can actually work with spirit. Everybody's compass should be set on her return. It just should be. But you have to go through, you have to be able to ignore the logical progression of it. That is, there's timelines involved. What are the facts of the cases? That's why we ask so many things and we look like just nosy citizens all the time. But you have to be able to ignore the fact that there's a timeline that's happened. That there are, what do you mean there's no witnesses? What do you mean they don't have any evidence? What do you mean they found the bike but nothing else? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? And then you also have to start to recognize that then the right side of your brain, so the left side of your brain is doing all that logical stuff. The, oh no, if it's going to take much longer and they don't know who it is, and then then the right side of the brain is actually getting super creative with the worst case scenarios ever, with the ideas of like, oh, well, I think they might be in a trunk, or I think they might be on a dirt road, or those things that are compelling that could be tips, but you need to be very trained in the connection and the understanding of what somebody in an investigation needs to see. They need facts. The emotional part of it is on your sleeve. You're in it and you're congruently connected to it because you care. It's a no-brainer. Now turn it off. People that harm kids in particular have no conscience and in relative terms have no soul. There is no remorse for what they're doing because they had to shut off a boundary that is both natural and highly deviated to the norm if they're able to break it. So as a conscious citizen, you need to be able to take that logical piece of it and then also take the spiritual piece of it. And that's why things like our pineal gland are so important, because when spirit enters into it, spirit, that filter of truth is really what they need. They need that fact. They need evidentialness. They need evidential mediumship. They need evidential psychic work, which is so rare. I'm sorry, guys, but everybody running around calling themselves psychic, their accuracy rate is throwing a dart with a blindfold in the back end of a bar. It's just not there. Now, could you mold that into getting it to a place where you can fine tune it? Absolutely. And I'm grateful for it. And I've met a lot of them that work on it. But there is that part where you need to be able to shut off that human emotion to be able to get very fact-based. When I was studying the chart, I saw the grand Earth trine, and I'm going to bring it back up here. I saw this grand Earth trine, and I was very particularly impressed with not only how clean it was, but also, guys, look at this. It's 27 to 26 to 26. That's pretty tight. Like we're not making this up. This is pretty tight. And the idea that here is Pluto, and I want to reassess this. Pluto was sitting in the 11th house of community, of extended network. This Pluto speaks to all the effort of the over 200 volunteers and workers, professionals that were connected to this case. The Mercury represents her personal action, her personal safety, and the safety of everybody rushing to her safety, and the actions of everybody to that safety, right? And by the way, let's go back up here to Mars, who is square to this. Mars is saying to Pluto, do something. We have to act on it. Empower this the right way. Then Mars is sitting here sending out a little bit of love. It's capable of saying to Venus, going, hey, hang in there. Hang in there. We're trying to make this right. Venus in Libra, one of the few times that it can sit around and say, like, I see the good. You got to take the good, take the bad. Doesn't matter. Here we have a positive outcome. And then you have the moon at this 26 degree. You know, we're matching the 26 degree over here, the 27 degree. And by the way, there is a little bit of leeway with Pluto. Why? Because it's such a big planet, outer planet, kind of one of the big boys, right? As Penny would say. And it's conjunct with Uranus. Quick and sudden turnaround, everybody. Ta-da! Wide conjunct to Jupiter. And by the way, some people make the argument that Jupiter is not really an effective here, but it's all in the second house. Creates a stellium sitting there going, hey, listen, we want the positive outcome to it. Quick and sudden and big. And emotional. Ta-da! I give you the second house in Taurus. I also was witness to a lot of people that were trying to grandstand on this. Again, I really appreciate people that want to help. Just know your lane, that you're in a public forum. And you can't make it about you in this. You just can't. That's the third rail, right? That ends up being, you know, some of the conversation. Because then in October 2nd at 8 p.m., after things were picked up and moved along, I'm just going to read this. On October 2nd, through the course of investigation, and I'm going to totally break screen on this. This wasn't a psychic. This wasn't a medium. This wasn't a pendulum. This wasn't a deck of cards. This was good, old-fashioned, 100% good police work. This was good, and I'm going to swear, fucking police work. Every single inch they had, they explored it. They built a case. They had the parameters in which everything was pointed to, and they fully understood what they were dealing with. The professionals, let us be grateful that they've committed their lives for this moment. And anyone who was involved with this and saw it up close knew the frustrations that were going on, because they are such professionals. Again, I'm not mincing words here. The thing that I'm presenting here is that the astrology was in perfect form. So back to the statement here. And I'm going to make this a little bit larger here. State police identified the individual as being in the area. Again, doesn't matter who it is. And Charlotte was missing. There's her first name only. I appreciate that. Notice how the state police is also saying, let's give this girl some break here. Further investigation led to multiple residencies where the individual is known to reside upon one of the residences at 632. October 2nd, the state police located Charlotte in safe and good health. Suspect was taken into custody. The investigation with multiple agencies working for the common goal to bring this child home. We can emphasize enough the appreciative that we are of Charlotte's community, friends, and family. This is still an active investigation. So basically, you're not going to get a whole lot of information out of us. I want to go back to the chart one more time. And I just want to point out that everything that they said in there was actually part of this chart. Every part of it. You had, I'm going to bring it up a little bit bigger here. You had her community, Pluto in the 11th house. You had technology and other agencies coming together for a common good. You have Uranus sitting here, right? You have the actions of all of these people in open communication. Mercury was working with it. So Mercury, the communication, Uranus, the technology, the moon, the emotion connected with Pluto in the community. By the way, everything has duality, guys. Is Saturn still in opposition to Venus? Sure is. Is Neptune still in opposition to Mercury? Absolutely. Is the Sun in opposition with Chiron? Ha. The Chiron moved into the first house. The North Node of this one talks about the healing in the first house. So personal identity for healing is going to come through, right? The sun can illuminate it in its balanced way. You also have the parts of this where Pluto, again, can we just call it a planet again, guys? It did its work here, gets a badge of honor, should probably get, accommodation from at least New York State Police. You know what? I'm gonna give Pluto the Good Deed Doer Award, because if the Wizard of Oz can hand out awards, so can I. Pluto did its job here. Mercury's going to Mercury, Pluto's going to Pluto, Uranus is going to be Uranus. That's just how it is. The moon moving over this in Taurus made it be the emotional part of it to say we have to do what's right. It also made someone make a mistake. And that is all I'm going to say. All right, guys, I want to thank you guys for being a part of things here. I want to give the heart tap out to the entire New York State Police Force, any of the assisting agencies to this, the other states, the counties, the federal, and really a heartfelt thank you to all your expertise. The good guys are going to win, guys. The good guys are going to win. I know it doesn't feel that way sometimes, and I know that we just want to throw up our hands and quit. But there are really hardworking people that, by the way, don't even understand spirituality, and that's okay. They don't even get tarot cards, astrology, or even want to face the idea that mediumship could be healing for them with their losses and struggles. None of our business. What is our business is that the society really does err on the side of good. We have one shithead who's in jail now and should be. And there's one girl that had to suffer through that shithead's decisions. That's what we're up against all the time. That is why we should applaud things when they go well. And that is why we have to take a learning approach when it doesn't go right. Because we're all doing our best. I saw it firsthand. And that's why Charlotte's home today. I want to give you guys a heart tap and remind you guys to love and care for one another. Head to my website, sign up for the email list. I've got some surprises coming up. Get involved with our weekly class. It's just $44 a month, and it's very reasonable because I want everybody on board. I'll see you guys soon. Heart taps, and keep going. Keep going.